Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into a really perspective-shifting piece by Oluyomi Ola-David called Africa's Bright Dawn. She offers this absolutely profound reframing of how the global community and especially investors view the African continent. Today, we're going to challenge some of those old narratives and look at demographics and emerging trends through an entirely new lens that she provides. So let's just dive right in. Right out of the gate, she points directly to the continent's vibrant assets. We're talking about beautiful colors, incredibly rich and diverse cultures, and perhaps most crucially, a wildly promising young population. She makes a really compelling case that these aren't just nice cultural touchstones, they are the actual tangible engines for future growth and development. A young, energetic demographic is exactly what you need to fuel a massive economic resurgence, and she really wants us to keep this tremendous human capital top of mind as we look at what's next. Now, while her outlook is incredibly optimistic, she definitely isn't ignoring the historical context. She acutely observes that the scars of self-hatred, which were subtly engineered by colonial rule and dependence, still impact mindsets today. But by acknowledging this deep-seated historical reality right up front, she makes her pivot toward a message of hope and African dignity that much more powerful. She's basically telling us, yes, this history exists for sure, but it absolutely does not dictate the future. And that brings us to a really fundamental question, one that kind of forces a complete mental reset. How should we view the continent's development challenges? If we accept her premise that there is this incredible wealth of young talent and rich culture, how do we frame the very real infrastructural gaps that are still out there? Well, she challenges us to stop looking at these through a lens of pity or thinking they're just impossible to fix. Instead, she wants us to wipe the slate clean and prepare for a massive paradigm shift in how we evaluate risk and reward. This is where things get really interesting. Traditional analysts look at things like energy insecurity, low manufacturing capacity, or poor healthcare, and they just see severe development challenges. But Ola-David, she reframes those exact same issues as massive, lucrative opportunities for forward-looking investors. Think about it the way she does. A gap in energy infrastructure isn't just a problem. It's a completely untapped market waiting for a provider. Poor healthcare just means there's a huge population actively waiting for innovative private sector solutions. She's arguing that where the old guard sees a massive barrier to entry, the visionary investor sees a wide-open playing field with literally limitless potential. Of course, you might be thinking, a challenge is only an opportunity if it can actually be solved, right? So the natural question is, how are these historical obstacles actually being overcome today? Is this optimistic shift really happening on the ground? Well, the evidence she points to suggests that it absolutely is. Her vision for the continent is already in motion. So what is the primary catalyst driving this change right now? It's technology-enabled business and personal finance solutions. Both indigenous and foreign-vested firms are actively jumping in to facilitate enterprise development. By leveraging fintech, they are entirely bypassing those traditional, clunky legacy infrastructures that held economic progress back for decades. When you combine that promising young population she highlighted earlier with modern tech, you can literally start dismantling those massive developmental roadblocks overnight. Think about it. Historically, the absolute biggest roadblock to growth was simply poor access to finance. You couldn't easily get a loan, store capital securely, or even transact safely. But look at the three-step evolution happening right now. First, deploy tech finance solutions like digital banking. Second, that instantly improves access to capital for the average person and small business owner, completely leapfrogging traditional banking models. And third, that newfound access rapidly accelerates business startups and growth. She clearly demonstrates how a single technological intervention can just unravel decades of financial stagnation. But it's not just the tech sector. There's also this increasing systemic focus on prioritizing sustainable development and improving the overall ease of doing business. And she makes a really important point here. This isn't just coming from the top down. This is a priority shift happening across the board. African individuals, households, expanding firms, and governments are all pushing for this. When everyday people demand better solutions and governments actively work to cut red tape, you create an incredibly fertile environment for those forward-looking investors she was talking about earlier. And here is where the vision scales up dramatically. We so often think of emerging markets as simply trying to catch up. But because African innovators are forced to build solutions in incredibly complex, resource-constrained environments, their products end up being incredibly robust and adaptable. Soon, the solutions developed for local problems are going to be exported to solve global problems. She is making a very strong case that Africa isn't just going to be a consumer of global tech. She believes it's poised to become a primary exporter of vital, stress-tested innovations to the rest of the world. It really all culminates in one big concept: the next global hub. By combining those rich foundational assets, leveraging tech to leapfrog barriers, and creating a supportive business environment, Ola David projects Africa as a central destination for global investments. We're talking about a future where global capital flows in, not as aid or extraction, but as eager investment into the world's next great center of global innovation and enterprise. It's a highly compelling, data-backed vision. We're going to wrap up this explainer with her own powerful sign-off. She writes, "It is Africa's day. For brighter days, think Africa." She has systematically laid out exactly why the old narrative of a struggling continent is just totally obsolete. So, I'll leave you with this provocative thought based on her insights. If she's right, and the trends heavily suggest she is your portfolio truly prepared to participate in the next great global hub, or are you still viewing the world through yesterday's lens? Think about it. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and keep learning.